Hello and welcome to a casted game. I am Renegade Moose and I'm coming to you today with some tournament action. I saw a comment on a previous post, someone asking about showing high elf play into some of the more um, what's the wording here? Some of the better armies in the game, some of the higher rated armies like Norska, Slanesh. These are kind of your meta monsters, as people would say. Meta being the current state of the game. So here we have a tournament final game. This is between myself and a rogue AI, a very strong opponent, coming in as Slanesh. So let's go over the armies a little bit. So for my lord, I have Campaign Techless, as I like to call him. I'm bringing a lot of spells, Chain Lightning, Flock of Doom, Regrowth, and Net. Normally, you'd only want to bring one or two spells because each of these cost gold to take, which I could be spending on other units. But with the High Elves, you have access to a certain set of items on your mage heroes that make Winds of Magic not really a big concern because each of those spells, for those who don't know, uses Winds of Magic, if we can select them. And so you have a limited pool of these. I think it's 80, I believe, without any augmentation. So a couple chain lightnings mixed with a net of Amantox, and you'd be out of Winds of Magic. But with these mages here, they have no spells, but just their items, the Starwood Staff and the Book of Hoeth. These items allow you to generate a basically unlimited Winds of Magic. I can't remember how much it is, but if you do the math there, zero point 0.4 times 23 seconds, that's about like 12-ish or so winds of magic, or a little less than I think. Multiply that by 3 times. I've already used it once. That's why there's only 2 uses. Use the Book of Hoeth to increase your recharge rate so it goes into your pool faster. And that's about 60 winds of magic between these two mages. So on top of your base 80 to 140, then you can unsummon these mages, bring them back in, get more, on and on and on. Really, the only thing is you need the game to last a while so you have a chance to use all of that winds of magic. So you don't really want to be running straight into the fight and getting things over quickly. So as a result, I go for kind of a kiting approach with these Shadow Walkers. Very cool looking models. Some of the best looking models in the game, in my opinion. They look very Lord of the Ringsy. Wow, look at the pixelation on that tree. Top notch graphics from my computer there. But these guys are really cool. They have good shooting, high missile strength, especially into unarmored stuff like Slanesh likes to bring, and then really good melee stats, really low HP, so they will fold pretty quickly in a fight, but they do a lot of damage, and they are stock, so my opponent does not see them at the moment. You can see that hidden keyword there. A couple of silver helms to kind of just keep away in any early enemy pressure, and that is the build. For my opponent, a mass of Slaneshi infantry. Slaneshi infantry and just units in general are really strong because they have the mark of Slanesh that gives them Strider, so they're very fast. They are not affected by hills or water. If there was a watery area, which I believe there is on this map, I believe this is water over here, or like wet terrain, which would normally slow you down. And they also get the immune to psychology trait and faster speed. So immune to psychology is a really good ability and basically increases your leadership. You don't suffer from fear, can't get terror routed, and it just makes your staying power really, really good, really sticky. And Slangors are one of the best infantry units in the game right now with the recent DLC they came out, and they just have really good melee stats, really high melee attack, bonus versus infantry on top of that. So light armor will get absolutely obliterate them. Right off the bat, going for a net and a chain lightning using the Sword of Teclis to boost the mastery on that. And we can see a lot of damage going in. If this chain lightning stays on top of these Forsaken, they will be really cooked up. Trying to drop another spell if I remember. Yep, Flock of Doom, also with the mastery, doing nice damage, hitting 2 units. 3 would have been nice, but you do what you can. Moving up the Shadow Walkers, opponents still can't see them. I have Fire at Will off, and I'm trying to take Objective 2. I hold Objective 1, my opponent moving some Forsaken sneakily through the bushes there. I do try to get some shots off on my opponent. They brought a Slanesh caster with Pavane, which rampages units, forcing them into melee. Acquiescence for a slowdown, and then Phantasmagora is kind of a net. And then I don't think no other items besides that. Decent combat character, but you definitely are going to want to keep them away from these Shadow Walkers who are really accurate. That's another thing you can't see on the stats for Shadow Walkers, is they're one of the most accurate arch units in the game. For myself, I'm just going to be summoning in lots of Silver Helms across the board. These guys have nice armor, really high armor at 100, so they'll be able to fight off Slaneshi Cav. They have really good charge bonus at 64, so they'll do really solid damage into these unarmored Slangors. Shadow Walkers getting a nice shot. I did a full volley into these Slangors, so my opponent couldn't see these units, so wasn't ready to dodge, so got some nice damage in there. So between the Forsaken and the Slangors, I'm just trying to kite right now, use spells to hit the Forsaken with the Chain Lightning, use this devastating Archer Fire to get damage on top of these Slangors, and just try to punish my opponent for building up. I have the objective advantage, so they will have to make the first move at some point, but for now, we're just going to be poking. My opponent does juke right there, so a little unoptimal there, inoptimal? Whichever one you want. Not doing the most damage into that unit there. So my opponent pulling back, maybe getting a little wise to the Shadow Walker kite happening. So I decide to rotate the blob around. They are hidden once again, so my opponent can't see them. Gonna rotate them around the pillar, try to get maybe another volley into these Slangors. My opponent building up a lot of points. I believe they are planning a kind of a mass summon. Yep, Furies coming in to the left, to the right, and the middle. And this is most likely going to be the call for battle. I imagine the Fury is going to dive onto some of the archers, if I remember correctly. And then this massive melee units is going to push in. Firing another volley into some Slangors. Techless going in for another Chain Lightning, if I can get it. Do got to watch out for a Rampage here. That would have been pretty devastating if that went off on Techless. Looks like Chain Lightning, very good AP on that spell. That's going to mess up these Forsaken. And then just going to be pulling back with all of my units here. Trying to kite. One volley going off, doing a lot of damage. And I believe this is a Phantasmagora. Yeah, really nice by my opponent. It's going to prevent these kiting units from retreating. The leadership isn't going to be too big of a deal on these guys. Excuse me. But this is going to lock in my skirmishers, keep them tied up so this engagement in melee can happen, which is really not what I want. Silver Helm's going into Hellstriders here. Fury's trying to dive in. Shadowwalker's still shooting even as they're tied up. And I like this move from my opponent, going with the Forsaken, passed onto these units in the back, and then wrapping around. So after the Phantasmagora ended, they will still keep this blob of units tied up for myself. I call in a Lion Chariot of Trace. These guys are an amazing unit for High Elves. Do a ton of damage running through infantry as long as you can micro them and keep them away. Things are really tied up now in the back. Fury's diving in, Forsaken getting on top of the units here. This is going to be a nasty melee. This is exactly what Slaanesh wants. So great job by my opponent enveloping and wrapping things up. Now I just need to keep these Silver Helms bouncing around, giving them new charge orders to get their charge bonus refreshed because it's very high. And it looks like things are going okay so far. Chaos Fury is getting cleaned up. Forsaken getting cleaned up. My opponent did not take Objective 1, which is nice for me. Looks like an Acquiescence, lowering melee defense there on those Silver Helms. More Forsaken, really trying to shut down. I do drop a net, though, on top of my opponent's Chaos Lord. And Shadow Walkers, with their really high accuracy, there's pretty good armor on this Chaos Sorcerer Lord. But if I get enough shots in here, this guy will go down, and that will be a huge pick for me, removing that Phantasmagora that was catching me before. He is routed, but he is still alive, and it looks like he might get away. He can't be microed, so there's a chance the volleys could take him down. But the Forsaken are getting on top of my units. I have to pull back, and that guy lives on 456 HP, so likely going to live out. I don't have any way to chase him down. Chain Lightning, clean up a unit of Slangors here. Might have been better to wait a little longer, get a nice blob here with all three of these units, but it does hit that Slangor too, actually, so that's not too bad. And that Flock of Doom is going to hit a lot of things. Looks like, no, not quite on the Sword of Techless bonus there, but pretty good. Forsaken are really bogging things up, though, and if this goes on too long, Slaaneshi reinforcements like these Fiends are really fast and are going to start doing serious damage in my units. A lot of units have, for Slaanesh, have devastating flankers. So if they get a rear charge on your units, they will do a lot of damage. Pulling back the Silver Helms. I don't want to fight Fiends in a straight up fight if I can avoid it. These guys are really strong. They don't have high armor though, so Silver Helms with a good charge will do pretty good damage. I'm going to try and avoid the Fiends for now. Over here, mages have used their items right now, just using them for capture weight. They do have 3 capture weight apiece, which is really nice. So they will be able to get on this middle objective and start adding pressure. Over here, Fiends and Spears, a really good pairing for my opponent. The Arawar Spears for Slaanesh are going to do really well into these Silver Helms. These guys are not going to be able to survive. But on this flank, these Silver Helms are kind of away from the Spears and have been able to get a pretty good engagement into the Fiends. You can see doing some pretty solid damage there. More kind of raggedy Silver Helm units charging in from the flanks. Don't want to unsummon those guys. They can still do good damage. Over here, Slaanesh swarming onto what's left on the middle objective, though I am getting the objective control there, and you can see my opponent's Lord hiding out in the background. Chain Lightning, again, with the infinite magic, is really strong here. It might even be doing damage to the Fiends. I didn't think Chain Lightning did anything to low model units like that, but I can't tell if that was the Silver Helms or the Chain Lightning. But that does really nice damage into the Spears, softens them up, and I just disengage from this grouping. These units here aren't really too consequential. They do block my reinforcements, but they're not on objective 1. They're not on objective 2, so not affecting me too much. Looks like Flock of Doom did some good damage to these Chaos Furies. More Hellstriders coming out, and I think that's the only units for Slaanesh. I call out these Sword Masters of Hoeth, the chattest unit on the High Elf roster. These guys are really badass. They do a ton of damage to armored infantry, so they will cut through these Forsaken, especially a tattered unit like that, like it's not even there. On top of that, these guys have 7 capture weight compared to the normal 5 for an infantry unit. So once I get them on an objective, they will be really solid there. Value is really close, but with my opponent's Lord, looks like he does shatter. I did not know. This is my first time watching the game back after it happened, so I actually thought this guy lived and was hanging out in the corner. But with him shattering and routing off the battlefield, I tried to get another Shadow Walker volley off on him in this area here in the middle, but I never actually saw if it worked out, so that was pretty big. Over here, Hellstriders cleaning up some of my units. Chariots are not designed to go into this unit, but they have pretty high armor, or not really at 60. But I do call it another Silver Helm unit, and I really just need to hold these guys in place. With their low armor, they will get dumpstered pretty hard by the Silver Helm charge if I can land it. And yep, and on top of that, the Chariots live. Chariots still have their 4 models too, so at full fighting capacity. My opponent trying to do a cheeky steal on objective 1. Value getting even closer together, but that does not factor in the disintegration that has happened on all these Fear units. My opponent trying to bring in some Slaying Gores, get a capture on objective 1, but with the points lead, it's going to be very difficult for my opponent to dislodge these units I have here, especially with these Sword Masters on the objective, on top of these 2 mages with their 6 combined capture weight. That's 13 capture weight between these 3 units here, whereas a infantry unit only has 5 capture weight. So it's would take a lot of Slaaneshi units. So in my opponent saying no thank you to the Sword Masters is going to try and go for a back cap. But these Chariots, you could see, combined with the Flock of Doom, the Roombas of Death, the Lion Roombas, there's got to be a better net. I'll have to workshop that one, see if I can come up with something better. These guys getting really solid value, kind of the MVPs, honestly, of this game. Dropping a net on top of these Hellstriders may be unnecessary, but will help keep them from fighting and let them get surrounded a little easier. I do get the route on that unit. Shadow Walker's being called back in to kind of provide pressure, and that is going to be a wrap just about. My opponent calling in some Heart Seekers, a hard-hitting unit, but very fragile. They will not want to get shot at by Shadow Walkers. They won't really want to take a charge from anything, even Sword Masters of Hoeth, while anti-infantry do a lot of damage. So if they get a charge, they will affect them and beat them up pretty good. Looks like an army ability on the Shadow Walkers does some nice damage, but they'll be okay. They do have, wow, that army ability really does a lot of damage. But with Techless coming in to help, they will get cleaned up. And my opponent trying to look for some type of pick here with the Heart Seekers, but doesn't quite get a very good clean charge there. And the Sword Masters of Oath will kind of trade out with these Heart Seekers. Just more and more Silver Helms to come in now, kind of on the resummon for some of these units. I think they've all lived their first life. And with their high charge, they'll trade still well into Heartseekers and into these Hellstriders. So not really too much. I think this one is over at this point. Not much route for a comeback. I think my opponent I know had played several high elf players in this tournament already. And I'm wondering if those players went for wider kind of archer builds, where you would say get a big wall from objective 1 to objective 2 of the ship's company or spears, and then have some regular archers in the back to kind of lay down fire. Something like that Forsaken Slangor wall really would have done well against that, enveloping an army back here, coming through the woods in the flank, tying things up, and really just bogging stuff down. But with this kiting, techless net style, I really was able to just run away into my backfield, fall back, use the closeness of my reinforcement points to get Silver Helms out, and really put down some serious damage into those units. And normally high elves would struggle into armored infantry. It kind of is a weak point for them, and armored cavalry, but Slaanesh doesn't really bring that. But the chain lightning nets combined with the lion chariot, wherever it's hanging out, still back there, yep. I was able to kind of clean up those Forsaken, freeing up the Silver Helms to do some serious damage into the enemy mobility. Just posturing now, dropped a Flock of Doom, getting some nice poke with the Shadow Walkers. I do summon in, yep, the mages are back, and so you can see kind of how the infinite magic works out here. The items refresh when the unit is called back in. I see I already used one Starwood Staff, and a second one coming back there. So pretty soon, Techless will have enough Winds of Magic to drop another round of, say, you could do a net, Chain Lightning, drop a big Flock of Doom, that type of thing. Engagement going here, a last-ditch attempt from Slaanesh, diving in, trying to get some work in. Hellstriders will trade okay, but big Flock of Doom, Sword of Techless boosting that spell mastery. That's going to do a lot of damage onto all of these units here, on top of just the overwhelming number of Silver Helms. That is going to clean up that little last pocket of resistance. These units in the middle will never deal with the Sword Masters in time with their high armor, high capture weight, and armor piercing damage. And so that was the game. Let's see what type of value Techless got with his unlimited Winds of Magic. 3,100, pretty solid. He cost about 2,000, and these mages are 600. So definitely still a question of, was it more than he costs? But there is capture weight from these mages too, so there's a lot to factor in. Pretty good from the Shadow Walkers. They all got, one of them doing really well, about their value back. Silver Helms did some nice bullying. Sword Masters didn't really fight anything, but they did okay. Yeah, really solid value from the Silver Helms, and then that Lion Chariot doing absolutely ridiculous damage. For my opponent, that Chaos Sorcerer Lord getting caught was definitely a big play for myself, removing my opponent's magic. Definitely kept that Chaos Sorcerer Lord's value down. And then the Fiends did all right. Heartseekers got kind of messed up. I imagine the Furies did okay. Yeah, they did pretty good. Well, there you go. There's an example of how to play High Elves into one of, if not the highest meta armies in the current game state. You kite, you use infinite magic, and you try to avoid any fair fights, basically. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave any thoughts or questions or any other elf matchups you might want to see down in the comments, and I'll see if I can do it. I'll catch you next time.